So the origins and developments of single-party states here, it really does come down to being a phenomenon of the 20th century. And there are some reasons why the 20th century seems to be it, and that will come out in these notes, but then also perhaps in the case studies as well. And this phenomenon does carry into the 21st century. It's not like all of a sudden year 2000 came around and all of a sudden dictatorships disappeared. They didn't. They're still with us. We can look at places like North Korea as an example there. It is definitely dominated by a single leader, and that came out in that video clip as well, but it's dominated by a single leader here, whether it's Mao, Hitler, Stalin, Castro, Perón, Mussolini, Francisco Franco, Kim Il-sung. The list can go on and on. And, their path to power is elaborate and systematic. It just didn't happen. It's like all of a sudden they turn the light switch on and we're a dictatorship. It's planned. I mean, as we found out looking at Adolf Hitler and bringing on the Second World War, there's a plan. There is a Stufenplan, a master plan, and how about going about doing it. But they have to get in power first in order to then create their single-party state and act on their wishes. And when we look back on these individuals and the countries that they take over, and that's really what we look at when we talk about single-party states, authoritarians, and dictators, is they take power. And as a result of them taking power and their style of rule, they create the most significant destruction and dislocation in history. We can look at Joseph Stalin with how he went after his opponents and individuals that he did not think were good for the socialist model, that need to be made examples, and sent them off to gulags, or Pol Pot, killing 25% of his population, known as the killing fields, clearing out the urban centers. That's creating dislocation. That's creating destruction there. All right. Historical context. You're going to hear me say that a lot. We got to have some context. Why do these leaders emerge? What's happening in the country that is allowing for someone like a Mao or Joseph Stalin or Adolf Hitler to rise to power, or Francisco Franco? In some cases, these leaders, the authoritarian state might be actually established, and now another authoritarian rises to power. But when we talk about a crisis state here, there's no single party state that emerges during times of peace or prosperity. It has to be in a crisis. Whether that crisis is economic crisis, political instability, lack of leadership, unpopular governments, wars, maybe happening, conflicts, all that stuff. I mean, World War I is a good example. It's a catalyst that will serve as a launching pad for someone like Benito Mussolini in Italy. Like that video clip said, he kind of sets the tone. He creates the playbook, and others will build off it. Adolf Hitler, in many ways, will admire how Benito Mussolini came to power. Even in that document that Joseph Goebbels put together about advice for a dictator, the last point he makes is Mussolini's work is unshakable. For his people, he is an idol. He gave back to Italy what has always been the surest and best foundation. But Benito Mussolini wouldn't have risen to power if World War I didn't happen and create a crisis state in Italy. Germany and the Soviet Union also used World War I as an opportunity to create authoritarian states as well, as we'll find out. All right, so historical context is big. Now we're talking about the leader here. Ooh, look at this. There's a young Joseph Stalin. Looks like he belongs in a boy band here. Lot different than he looks like that we probably the images of him in World War II. But when we talk about this, a leader. They are in many ways, the embodiment of the authoritarian state. They dominate the political spotlight. It is about them, and they have a number of qualities that could lend themselves to being admired or to come into power. It could be their physical characteristics. Again, look, young picture of Joseph Stalin. Maybe that's a reason there. But the physical characteristics could be height. If Fidel Castro walked into the room, I mean, he's 6'3". He's going to command that. But if Joseph Stalin came to the room, he's only 5'6". So he's not that. Him and I could hang together with that. Intelligence, intelligence could be part of it. Can they articulate their program? Personality skills or personal skills? Many of them were pretty good public speakers. They're very confident and they know how to whip up a crowd. Their ability to recruit and gain support. Some street cred there. Both Stalin and Adolf Hitler are going to have a criminal record. Got some street cred there. Mao, he's a revolutionary. He's gonna fight a revolutionary cause, civil war cause. He's gonna hang out with the peasants. They got street cred. So again, our spotlight is going to be on Adolf Hitler, Joseph Stalin, and Mao. And we'll take care of most likely Mao in trimester 3. All right. Oh, there's that image again here. You got Zhou Enlai and Mao. Again, looks like a boy band. But, taking power. How do these individuals actually get into power? So if they're going to create authoritarian state, they got to get into power. And so they got to seize power. Again, that's in many ways a key component of an authoritarian state here is to gain power. They could gain power through the elections, but in many cases, they're going to gain power through violent means, like war, possibly, maybe with the help of foreign intervention. Francisco Franco of Spain would be an example there. Propaganda, mass media, all that stuff can play a part in how they gain power. Mao and Castro effectively used guerrilla warfare. Mao is going to be able to hang out in the countryside, pick away at the nationalist forces that way, eventually convert his guerrilla group into a conventional army, but that's more in the second phase of it. Castro fights guerrilla warfare from the Sierra Maestra Mountains and eventually is going to be successful. Hitler and Mussolini, different path, more of the election process is going to be their path, but they got to get the power, and once they get the power, they got to get their message out. You can only do so much, but you got to have a message. And that message it could be built around a certain ideology. And we know that some of these leaders, like Adolf Hitler, is going to be a fascist. So that's right-leaning ideology, more conservative, reactionary type ideology. And then you got someone like Joseph Stalin or Mao Zedong that are left-leaning ideology. They're communists. And so they're going to have a very radical view. They got to get that message out, and that message can be in the form of their platform, and that is very critical. That's going to be their key to gain and hold power. If they can somehow articulate their platform, what their policies, programs, and actions are, and they can have some throw out some simplistic sayings and stuff. Arbeit und Brot, all right, work and bread. And understanding Germany is in the midst of a Great Depression. They need work and they need food. Arbeit und Brot, peace, land, and bread. Vladimir Lenin, I almost said John Lennon there. Vladimir Lenin, peace, land, and bread. But the message, how they deliver it in here in the 20th century, you have mass media, radio, film, um, publications, all that is going to help deliver the message. Big rallies. I mean, Adolf Hitler liked to have his big staged rallies. Adolf Hitler used the radio very effectively, as well as film. All that. All right. So if you have any questions or comments or concerns, just always unmute and ask away. Maintaining power. Now, in that little video clip, got a little excited there. In that video clip, it did tell us that maintaining power is more than just using force, but using force is part of it. And so effectively using their secret police, effectively using their military to go after their political opponents. So you got to eliminate your opposition there, have some arrests, maybe some showcase trials, executions, deportation of opponents and rivals. Hitler with the Night of the Long Knives, as we're going to find out, gets rid of the socialist element in the Nazi Party. Stalin with the showcase trials goes after his enemies, also identifies certain groups that need to go after, like the kulaks. But that, again, that can only go so far. You also have to please the masses, and that is, in the case of like Mao, seizing property and wealth and redistributing it, kind of win them over that way. Same with Fidel Castro. But again, very effective use of propaganda is very important here. In some ways, creating a cult of personality as well goes in with that effective use of propaganda, really establishing the individual, like Hitler, Mussolini, Stalin, Mao, is the most important person, and build the concept and build the state around that individual. Okay. And finally here, looking at policies, again, you know, they can come to power, they can have a message, they can try to maintain power, but they need to follow through, and they need to institute some policies that are going to create their authoritarian state. The economic policies is going to be very critical here. All right, so asterisk, start, underline it, do what you need to do, put it in your memory banks. The economic policies is critical to fulfilling their broad objectives of their regime. You know, like someone like an Adolf Hitler, you know, he's retooling the economy with this idea of creating a greater Germany, which is going to bring on war. Economic policies need to be created and then put into practice. Stalin is going to try to industrialize the Soviet Union. Got to create the 5-year plans. You know, Mao is trying to industrialize kind of rapidly China, and so with their 5-year plans, and you know, the disastrous Great Leap Forward. Fidel Castro trying to create a little sense of autarky. Again, all these economic policies are trying to create autarky here, and Cuba has a lot of sugar, and they went on a 10 million sugar harvest campaign with this idea of using the money from the sugar harvest to really advance Cuba. It failed. The social policies, again, reflect the type of regime, left or right, but again, the goal is just to re-engineer, modify the behavior of the people. And so that is to kind of create or recreate society, what it may have been or what it will become. Education is a big part of it too. Got to indoctrinate the youth. And so traditional education, backseat. The education policies in these regimes reflect the ideas of what the regime wants to accomplish, whether it's left or right. And then when you look at the status of women and status of minorities, all that depends on the type of regime as well, left or right. For women, if it's a right-leaning regime, women's rights are going to be scaled back. If it's a left-leaning regime, in theory, the dial is going to move forward for women. For minorities, well, they're simply going to be the targets in the regimes. The treatment may vary. In the case of, like, Adolf Hitler purposely going after minorities. But if, someone like a Juan Perón of Argentina, that might not necessarily be an important policy for the type of Argentina that Juan Perón wants to create here. So it really depends on the type of regime here. Okay. And so again, here we are going to spotlight several authoritarians, and you got one staring right at you, Adolf Hitler there, and those deep eyes are getting right at you.